Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tanamane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Bracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskatya Desatana. Today I'm going to read from the Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 8, Attaining the Supreme, and I'm going to read text number 14. Ananya Cheta Saratam Yomam Smarati Nityasha Tasyaham Subala Parata Nityuktasya Yogina. Is the sound all right? Yeah. Translation purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. For one who always remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain, O son of Pritha, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. Purport. This verse especially describes the final destination obtained by the unalloyed devotees who serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Bhakti Yoga. Previous verses have mentioned 4 different kinds of devotees: the distressed, the inquisitive, those who seek material gain, and the speculative philosophers. Different processes of liberation have also been described: karma yoga, jnana yoga, and hatha yoga. The principles of these yoga systems have some bhakti added, but this verse particularly mentions pure bhakti yoga without any mixture of jnana, karma, or hatha, as indicated by the word ananya cheta. In pure bhakti yoga, the devotee desires nothing but Krishna. A pure devotee does not desire promotion to the heavenly planets, nor does he seek oneness with the Brahma Jyoti, or salvation or liberation from material entanglement. A pure devotee does not desire anything. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the pure devotee is called nishkama, which means he has no desire for self-interest. Perfect peace belongs to him alone, but not to them who strive for personal gain. Whereas a jnana yogi, karma yogi, or hatha yogi has his own selfish interests, perfect devotee has no desire other than to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the Lord says that for anyone who is unflinchingly devoted to him, he is easy to obtain. Pure devotee always engages in devotional service to Krishna in one of his various personal features. Krishna has various plenary expansions and incarnations, such as Rama and Nrsimha. And a devotee can choose to fix his mind in loving service to any of these transcendental forms of the Supreme Lord. Such a devotee meets with none of the problems that plague the practitioners of other yogas. Bhakti yoga is very simple and pure and easy to perform. One can begin simply by chanting Hare Krishna. The Lord is merciful to all, but as we have already explained, he is especially inclined towards those who always serve him without deviation. The Lord helps such devotees in various ways. As stated in the Vedas, Katu Upanishad, Yam Evaisha Rinute Tena Labhyas Tasyaisha Atma Virinute Tanu Swam. One who is fully surrendered and engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord can understand the Supreme Lord as he is. And as stated in the Bhagavad Gita 10:10, Didami Buddhi Yogam Tam. The Lord gives such a devotee sufficient intelligence so that ultimately the devotee can obtain him in his spiritual kingdom. The special quality of a pure devotee is that he is always thinking of Krishna without deviation and without considering the time or place. There should be no impediments. He should be able to carry out his service anywhere at any time. Some say that devotees should remain in holy places like Vrindavan or some holy town where the Lord lived. But a pure devotee can live anywhere and create the atmosphere of Vrindavan by his devotional service. It was Sri Advaita who told Lord Chaitanya, "Wherever you are, O Lord, there is Vrindavan." As indicated by the words Satatam and Nitya Shah, which means always, regularly, or every day, pure devotee constantly remembers Krishna and meditates upon him. These are the qualifications of the pure devotee, for whom the Lord is most easily obtained. Bhakti is a system that the Gita recommends above all others. Generally, the bhakti yogis are engaged in 5 different ways. 1, Shanta Bhakta, engaged in devotional service in neutrality. 2, Dasya Bhakta, engaged in devotional service as servant. 3, Sakya Bhakta, engaged as friend. 4, Vatsalya Bhakta, engaged as parent. And 5, Madhurya Bhakta, engaged as conjugal lover of the Supreme Lord. In any of these ways, the pure devotee is always constantly engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord and cannot forget the Supreme Lord. And so for him, the Lord is easily attained. A pure devotee cannot forget the Supreme Lord for a moment, and similarly, the Supreme Lord cannot forget his pure devotee for a moment. This is the great blessing of the Krishna conscious process of chanting Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. For the verse again, Ananya Cheta Saratam Yomam Smarati Nitya Shah Tasyaham Subala Parata Ityuktasi Yogina. For one who always remembers me without deviation, I'm easy to obtain, Osana Prata, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chaksur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Welcome again, everyone. Here we find that devotional service, in order to come to the perfectional stage, has to be uninterrupted and simply to please Krishna. At the beginning, we're practicing devotional service, and therefore, as it mentions in the purport here, we should try to have a regular program every day where we at least have the opportunity to remember Krishna. And one of the most important parts of that program is to hear the philosophy about Krishna consciousness. Now, the philosophy of Krishna consciousness is not dry philosophy. It's the philosophy of how to develop devotion for Krishna. It is devotion that Krishna accepts in order to give us the opportunity for him to enlighten us within our heart so that we can experience what Krishna consciousness actually means. If we don't get Krishna's mercy, then we're in the position of, as Prabhupada used to say, licking the bottle of honey. The honey may look very nice, but if it's in the bottle, we can't really appreciate it very much, even if we have the opportunity to lick the bottle. We can't really taste the honey. Still, even theoretically, there's nothing superior to Krishna consciousness. What could be better than to have a philosophy where someone's going to live forever? If one comes to the goal of Krishna consciousness, then one gets eternal life. And what could be better than to have eternal life in full consciousness of bliss, happiness, and love. If we're going to live eternally, which we are, we might as well do it in full happiness, where everything is simply nectar. Everyone and everything is nectar. As Lord Brahma, by his own experience, says, Shriyat Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpatarava Druma Bhumi Shintamini Tvayam Amrita Kana Ganam Natyam. So Brahma, he says, Shriyat Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpatarava, that in the spiritual world, Krishna, being the source of everything, all beauty, all love, all bliss, he's the center of attraction. And everyone there loves Krishna in different ways. And there, not only Krishna is all attractive, but his abode is also attractive. The water is made out of nectar. The air is blissful. Every breath is blissful. You don't have to buy incense in the spiritual world because the air is flavored with all the ecstatic sense of the flowers and the Krishna's body aroma and the aroma of his devotees is all very blissful. And there, even if one walks, one's walking is like dancing. Even if one talks, then one's talking is like singing. So as Srila Jiva Goswami says, that if walking is like dancing, how can we imagine what the dancing is like in the spiritual world? If the talking is like singing, how can we imagine what the singing is like in the spiritual world? So that's our goal. But in order to go there, we have to develop the desire, because whether we're conscious of it or not, we're here in the material world in different places, material existence, because of our desires. Sometimes our desires are mixed with Krishna consciousness, and sometimes our desires are simply in the lower modes of nature. When our desires in the lower modes of nature, generally we take birth in the lower species of life, or we take birth on a planet like we're on now. And when our desires are mixed with Krishna consciousness, then we may go to the heavenly planets. We may merge in Brahman, or we may go back to the spiritual world if we purify our desires. Purify our desires means to more or less become conscious of who we actually are and what is actually beneficial for us. Now, every conditioned soul is naturally concerned about one's material body. And indeed, being concerned about one's material body is not detrimental to Krishna consciousness, because material bodies also belongs to Krishna. Just like I may borrow someone's car, but that doesn't mean I should drive it over a cliff, just because it's not my car. Generally speaking, if one is driving someone else's car, one should become even more careful about driving, as to not to disappoint the person we're borrowing the car from. If they're so kind to let us borrow their car, then we should be extra careful in taking care of it. So similarly, although this body doesn't belong to us, but because it can be used in Krishna's service, we have to take special care of it, so it can be used the best way possible in Krishna's service. And at the same time, we should be able to see things properly. Therefore, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Chaitasa sarva karmani maya sanyasi matparaha buddhiyogam upashitya matsitak sadatam bhava. So our first business is to understand how great Krishna is. That although for a materialist, the world appears to be made out of matter, but for a devotee, one understands that the world is made of Krishna's energies. And that being Krishna's energies, there's a superior energy, living entities, and there's the inferior energy, the gross and subtle material elements. Still, because it's all Krishna's energy, therefore, it's also should be utilized in such a way as to please Krishna. And for the Krishna, as we know, he comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because he actually wants everyone to become happy. And he knows that the soul cannot be happy struggling in the material world just to maintain his material body and to derive some kind of pleasure out of it. Although there is happiness in the material world, but it's not the amount of happiness that everyone is actually looking for. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes with his associates in order to convince us that the actual source and unlimited reservoir of pleasure is Krishna. And therefore, our first business is to understand how everyone and everything is related to Krishna and what everything actually is. From the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has explained to us that we're eternal. Now, it is not that after Krishna explained the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, he became eternal. Whether Krishna explained the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna or to anyone else, they still were eternal. But he explained the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna so he could be eternally in happiness, in Krishna consciousness, in spiritual existence. Since spirit is eternal, has eternal identity, and that eternal identity can lead to eternal happiness when the eternal identity is disclosed as being Nitya Krishna Das, the eternal servant of Krishna. Now, it is not that after hearing Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna became an eternal servant of Krishna. Actually, Arjuna and everyone else were all eternal servants of Krishna. Our choice is whether we want to serve Krishna directly or indirectly. But without Krishna as Paramatma within our heart, we have no remembrance, we have no forgetfulness, and we have no real awareness of what's going on. The more we're in contact with Krishna, in Krishna consciousness, the more we become conscious of him, not only within our heart, but we become conscious of all his different energies, how they're related to him. On the other hand, when we misuse his energies and forget how they're connected to Krishna, then we remember all kinds of illusions. As a matter of fact, the whole world is full of illusion. That illusion is broadcasted at every television station, every internet, practically speaking, every radio station, and every school. And that illusion is that we are this body, and the goal of life is to protect the body and things in relation to the body, and try to enjoy the body in different varieties of ways that are being offered by the illusory energy. Generally speaking, people take pleasure in the same things that people take pleasure in the spiritual world. In the spiritual world, the main attraction is the conjugal love between Radha and Krishna. And here we're imagining that the main attraction is either the conjugal love between some celebrities or our own personal conjugal loving affairs. So we're imagining that somehow or another, without focusing on Radha and Krishna, we can taste the same pleasure that they're experiencing in the spiritual world. And as there is conjugal love in the spiritual world, there's also parental love. So generally speaking, normal people, they love their children because all children are usually cute. Even if you see a little cockroach, although normally cockroaches are not very pleasant, but even little cockroaches are cute. Generally speaking, all babies are cute. Otherwise, who would want to take care of them? Even if you get an ugly baby, still it looks beautiful to the mother and to the father. Somehow or another, they can find some attractiveness. So parental love is here. What to speak of the spiritual world, where the object of parental love is the most charming baby, the perfect son. And here, friendship is valued. Teamwork, especially. In every country, generally speaking, people value some sport where they work together, whether it's a basketball team or a football team or a soccer team, where people work together towards a goal, however insignificant the goal may be. But if they can work together and kick a ball through a goal, then their teamwork is considered to be successful. If somehow or another they can put a ball through a hoop, then their teamwork is successful. Therefore, many times people, they join some armed forces and they find people working together finally. Most of the time they're fighting against some enemy, and therefore they're finally have some common goal with other people. Although the goal is not very significant, they imagine that they're doing something significant for their country or something like that. So friendship is there in the material world where people have a common goal and they work cooperatively with each other. And service is there also. If someone does some service to us, we become obliged to them. Most normal people feel obliged to people who do service to them. And if they do extra service here, if you're in a restaurant and someone does some extra service to you, the waiter or the waitress, then you feel obliged to give them a higher tip or to compliment them on their service. You feel some appreciation. A normal person would feel some appreciation. And of course, here in the material world, if someone sees some beautiful environment or scene, then one appreciates it. Even if it's just clouds in the sky, very, very artistically put together, one can appreciate how nice and how enjoyable, how appreciable is that particular scene. As a matter of fact, people who travel thousands of kilometers to go to the Grand Canyon to see how Krishna has sculptured the Grand Canyon. Or one will go to see some building, big cathedral. Actually, these cathedrals were not built just in a few years. They were undoubtedly built by persons with greater architectural skill than even modern man has right now. Otherwise, they claim sometimes that these cathedrals were built in the 1800s. But how is that possible? Where did they get the material from? In the 1800s, they only had horse and buggy. And they were transporting thousands of tons of marble and other materials to build these massive buildings with intricate designs. And 100, 200 years later, all we can do is build buildings that look like matchsticks. It looks like boxes put together, one on top of the other. So if 200 years ago, people were able to build such beautiful, elaborate cathedrals and structures like these capitals that they have with these elaborate domes and these, then people must have been much more advanced who build these elaborate structures than we are. Anyhow, we've written history, but still we can appreciate it. If you go and see an ordinary building in this world, it's not very appreciative. When we see advanced architecture made by persons with higher consciousness, then we can appreciate how even the material energy is arranged in a very beautiful, splendorous way. So, what to speak of spiritual world where the relationship is eternal and ever growing, and is based upon pure love. Now, here in the material world, as Krishna explained to Arjuna, that because we misidentify ourselves with this body, we take up the interest of the body above everything else. And therefore, we're thinking that by some arrangement, I can either protect my body or derive greater enjoyment from it. And therefore, whatever we do, we're wondering if I'm going to make a profit or am I going to get a loss? So in that consciousness itself covers our natural loving spirit. Without that anxiety over gain and loss, we're in the present. And in the present, it's possible to be Krishna conscious, to understand that all the energy here is Krishna's. And he's controlling everything here. And that instead of being overly concerned with what's going to happen to my gross and subtle body, I should be concerned in a loving relation with Krishna. Then if I have that concern, then everything becomes alive in Krishna consciousness. Because yeyatamam prapadyante. If we're concerned about the material nature, then Krishna will also reciprocate our concern and give us intelligence how to fulfill our material desires. And if we're concerned about Krishna consciousness, Krishna will give us intelligence how to fulfill our desire to be with Krishna. So that's called karma yoga, that we work in the material world and with the faith, with the understanding that everything is already taken care of. Whatever gain I'm going to get, Krishna will take care of. And whatever loss will be there, Krishna will take care of. Because we have to practice. Here in the material world, we have to practice how to accept things when Krishna gives them to us. Accept them as gifts of Krishna to be utilized in his service. We also have to accept that when Krishna takes something away, then we have to understand that we didn't lose anything because it was never really ours to begin with. The only thing that could really be ours is our relationship with Krishna, which is eternal. And having a relation with Krishna, we have a relationship with his energy as a servant of his energy also. That if Krishna takes something away and we remain in Krishna consciousness, then what we lost is our attachment to something illusory. And if Krishna gives us something and we use it in Krishna's service, we've lost our attachment to the idea that I'm gaining something. If we remain in Krishna consciousness, then we'll eternally hanker for Krishna and eternally lament that we don't have Krishna to the extent that we desire. Now, if we're on that platform of Krishna consciousness, as Krishna says, we still have to inquire, what does Krishna really want me to do? Now, as Prabhupada writes here, that it's really not that difficult for most of the time. Krishna wants us to do activities that will help us remember him. Because remembering Krishna means that we're actually associating with him. And if we do it in the attitude of service, in other words, if we perform our activities to please Krishna, then naturally we'll remember him. And if we do that, then Krishna will reciprocate and we'll become more and more aware of him. He'll reveal himself more and more to us. And that means we can see how our illusory idea that anyone or anything in this material world is separate from Krishna. Or as it says in the Sri Upanishad, we won't hate anyone and we won't be envious of anyone. We'll be appreciative that everyone is Krishna's servant. As Krishna has his associates in the spiritual world, like Mother Jasoda, Nanda Maharaj, the gopis, the cowherd boys, the lakes, the rivers, etc. So in Krishna consciousness, we can see that everyone has a unique relation with Krishna. And therefore, I don't have to envy anyone's material position, because if one has a very exalted position in this world, more exalted than I have, we simply hope that they'll utilize their exalted position for the benefit of others, to help them become conscious of Krishna. And if someone has a lesser position in the material world, then we can understand there's no impediment for anyone's becoming Krishna conscious, because the only thing necessary for one to have to become Krishna conscious is simply the sincere desire to be so. Therefore, we hope to encourage everyone, whether they're in a high position, supposedly, or in a lower position in the material world, to simply utilize whatever assets they have in Krishna's service for their own benefit and for the benefit of others. But there's no sense of envying anyone in the material world, because if someone utilizes their activities in Krishna's service, then it's a great benefit for everyone. And if someone doesn't, they may have so much opulence from the material point of view, but without Krishna, it's just like a lot of zeros. It doesn't matter how many zeros you have. You may have millions of zeros, but if you add them all together, it's still zero. But if you put a 1 in front of all those zeros, then it becomes a very significant number. So we appreciate anyone with great assets utilize those assets in Krishna's service. And if they don't, then they're, as it says in the one great devotee, that Vishvam Purna Sukhayate, that the whole world appears to be full of happiness. Vishvam Purna Sukhayate, Vidi Mahis Cha Kitayate. And even if one is great personality like Lord Brahma or Lord Indra, if they're not engaged in Krishna's service, then they're as insignificant as an ordinary insect. Because by their pious activities, they've obtained such an exalted position. But if that exalted position is utilized in Krishna's service, then they'll go back to the spiritual world. If it's not, then today they're Indra or Brahma, and tomorrow they'll be an insect. So why should we be envious of anyone? Instead, we should understand that as we can love the relationship between Mother Jasoda and Krishna, or between Srimati Radharani and Krishna, or between anyone with Krishna, So everyone has the potential to please Krishna and therefore become as glorious in one sense as all the spiritual associates of Krishna. One can shine in one's full glory, and therefore it's our business to help others to do that. We may take positions as servants or as master, whatever we take, but our only business is to encourage others, to assist them in deepening their own relation with Krishna. Because if they deepen their own relation with Krishna, they'll deepen their relation with all living entities, including ourselves, in more loving exchanges. And without that, then everyone is wasting their time. In other words, if we assist others to help them become Krishna conscious, then our valuable human life, our valuable time will be pleasing to Krishna, will be properly utilized, and will make advancement in our own relation with Krishna and our relation with all living entities. The problem is, due to our material attachments and our aversions, we like some people and we dislike others. And that can change immediately, just like even countries. Sometimes countries fight viciously with each other. Like in South America, there are countries that have animosity towards each other perpetually, over centuries. Like, for instance, Peru is always fighting against Chile and Ecuador. And if Argentina has a fight with Chile, then Peru and Argentina become friends because they have a mutual enemy. But that can change. If Peru becomes a friend of Chile, then it may become an enemy of Argentina. So this is due to our attachments and our aversions in the material world, friends and enemies, relationships. But if we put Krishna in the center and understand that everyone has the potential to develop their loving service to Krishna and become part of Krishna's eternal loving family, then there's no more friends and enemies in the material world. And therefore we can see things as they really are in Krishna's service. And it's not that Maya is going to say, oh yes, you're a very nice devotee, you understand things perfectly, and that this feelings within your heart of attachment and aversion, friendship and enmity, I'll automatically take them away. No, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Nanyam gunebhyas kartaram drashteva nupashyati gunebhyas cha param veti madbhavam sodhigachati. When you see that there's nothing beyond the modes of material nature, and that the Supreme Lord is transcendental to all these modes, then you can know my spiritual nature. So, Prabhupada writes that activities performed in knowledge strengthen one's advancement in real knowledge. Or he also says in the same purport, when one can see things as they are, then the influence of the modes of material nature gradually ceases. In other words, we're trying to see things with the eyes of knowledge, but that knowledge is not very complicated. It's to understand how everyone has an eternal relation with Krishna, and even this material energy has a relation to Krishna. And that what we want to do is find out what is the proper mood in dealing with others. What is the proper intelligence, how to assist others in becoming and advancing their own personal relation with Krishna. Now that means requires some transcendental experience, some transcendental intelligence and discrimination. As I often say, we recognize that a tiger has an eternal relation with Krishna, the soul within the body of the tiger. But that doesn't mean we enter into the cage of the tiger and give our pay our dandavats to the Targa, asking for forgiveness because we thought you were just a dirty old tiger. I didn't realize you were actually Krishna's eternal servant. Please forgive my offenses. I'm sure the tiger will be very happy to see us, especially if it's hungry. And the tiger may receive some prasadam, but that probably won't help the tiger advance very much in Krishna's service. Nor would it probably be exactly the service that Krishna would like us to render to the tiger. So we have to reciprocate with the tiger intelligently according to what Krishna would desire. Like, for instance, maybe throw a little prasadam to the tiger, but outside the cage. Similarly, in this material world, especially nowadays, where people are more or less like animals in the forest, we have to be very intelligent how we deal with them in order to help them become conscious of Krishna. But we shouldn't lose our mood. At least, even if we don't have the feeling, at least we should have the vision of things as they really are, rather than the way that Maya is presenting them to us, so that we can at least try to develop the proper feeling, the proper attitude. We hear the attitude of service, but service means a proper mood, a proper understanding, so that in spite of whatever consciousness we are currently covered by, or whatever feelings we may have, we can change that attitude, those feelings, by at least being aware that the proper attitude is that of service to Krishna. That attitude of thinking that I should be serving Krishna, and what does Krishna want me to do? How does Krishna want me to think? That will help us transcend whatever negative or even positive, materially positive attitude we have. Instead, Krishna will give us eventually the intelligence and even the feeling that we can adopt so that we can properly reciprocate with people, with all varieties of people, so that we can maintain our Krishna consciousness and somehow or another inspire them to make some advancement in Krishna service, or at least towards Krishna service. Now, if we forget that, then all we'll do is be in anxiety. What is my future? What do I have to do to make my future better in the material world? What is actually going on here? Just like now, people are absorbed in some kind of election, in America especially. They're always absorbed in some election, because that is the nature of illusion. They're thinking that if this person wins, that will be to my benefit. And if the other person wins, that will be to my detriment. But actually in Kali Yuga, unless one is a devotee, unless one is in the mode of goodness at least, whatever they do is bad. So to think that this is going to happen, if this person wins, then things will get better, or if that person wins, then things will get worse. But actually, everyone's going to get their karma. Doesn't matter who wins. The only way that things will get better if people follow the regular principles, which is the beginning of becoming religious. And religion is the beginning of following Krishna's instructions. So it doesn't matter who wins. If they're not austere, if they're not clean, if they're not truthful, if they're not merciful, then they're all going to cause problems. And what kind of problems? That depends upon the karma of the nation. if the people in the nation are not austere or merciful or truthful or clean, then they'll elect a person who'll give them exactly what they deserve. And it doesn't matter how many protests there are, how many people are glorifying some person, that they're the savior. They can't save anyone. Just like if you go to the jungle and you hope that maybe the tiger will save you or the deer will save you from the tigers, it's not a very good bet. Take shelter of the deer. Or if you think if I make friendship with the tigers, they'll save me. No, the tigers are not there to save you. They're there to eat you. So in the forest, there are many different types of animals. Some of them are docile and tame. Some of them are ferocious. But after all, they're all animals. And they're not really there to help anyone except for themselves. Therefore, as it says, Ite vidu swartagatim Vishnu, Durashaya ye bahir arthamanina. They don't know that the goal of life is to reach Krishna. And therefore, they're absorbed in insignificant things. Proclaiming that this is very important. Who wins the game? Who wins the election? When's the newest movie coming out? Materialistic movie. What the price of gold is. These things don't really matter at all in terms of Krishna consciousness. Now, why are people so absorbed in these things? Andaya tandira upagiyamanas te picha tantra urudami vara. Because they're blind. They don't know what the goal of life is. And therefore they're electing leaders who are also blind, who won't bring them to the goal. Now the blind leaders, are declaring that they see everything perfectly. But they don't see anything. They don't even see themselves. All they see is how to gain from what they're doing. And the people that are following them, hoping to gain something, they'll be disappointed at the end. Because even if the leader could fulfill their desires, that will simply increase their desires. There's no end to desires in the material world. On the other hand, Naishamatis Tavarukramangrim Sprishat Inata Bhagavo Yanartha Mahiyasham Padaruje Vishekam iskcon Shananam Na Navrita Yadvat. So one should choose a leader who's not obsessed with gain and loss in the material world, who can actually see things properly in relation to Krishna. And therefore, by following his footsteps, such as Srila Prabhupada, or those who are following Srila Prabhupada, by following and appreciating what they're doing, then we'll also become electrified in Krishna consciousness. And therefore, we'll be able to help others also. And that's when it becomes electrified in Krishna consciousness, then what do we have to offer to anyone? If we go out on book distribution or do anything, and we're not enthusiastic in Krishna consciousness, we're not dancing and chanting and smiling and happy, ecstatic from that service, what we're doing, then really what do we have to offer anyone? And if we are enthusiastic about Krishna consciousness, even in our home or whatever we're doing, if we come in contact with Krishna somehow or another, then we have something to offer to others. The simple process of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. If we find happiness we find enlightenment in this chanting, then of course we'll understand its value and we'll be enthusiastic about giving this gift to others. But we ourselves are chanting shnik shnik ram ram day 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 day, hey kitty kitty, hey kitty kitty. Then it's very unlikely we're going to say, hey, have you chanted shnik shnik ram ram day day day, hey, hey kitty kitty, hey kitty kitty. It's fantastic. Why don't you try it out? You'll be in bliss. No, we have to experience Krishna consciousness, and then we'll want to give it to our family. We'll want to give it to our friends, to strangers. We'll have something to give to others. So, trying to hear this philosophy every day, and the philosophy means try to recognize that everything, whatever we have, belongs to Krishna. Trying to understand through our books, through Prabhupada's books, how to utilize things in Krishna's service, how to understand from Krishna's representatives, those who know more than we do or can encourage us to utilize our things in Krishna's service, and to do it with the spirit, let me please Krishna. That I have no goal in life save and except to act in Krishna consciousness just to satisfy Krishna. And then Prabhupada writes, if we work in such a way, one will naturally have to think about Krishna, as explained in this verse. And thinking about Krishna means to associate with him. And if by good fortune we associate with Krishna in the right attitude and experience transcendental happiness from that, then our life will become successful in a very short period of time in Krishna consciousness. Because it's ultimately the higher taste in Krishna consciousness that's the fruit of our devotional service. Ishayan vinivartante nirharasidehinam rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishva nivartate. That the embodied soul may be restricted from sense objects, though the taste for sense objects remains, but ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, one becomes fixed in consciousness. So the fruit of our devotional service should be higher consciousness, and higher consciousness should mean higher experiencing and associating with Krishna in pure love and attitude of service. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Nityaseva Devi Dasi.
Gurudev, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I was thinking that when you were speaking about if somebody has a higher position than us, and then that they should ultimately it is uh, to help others to become Krishna conscious. So I was wondering that in this material world, generally when people have positions, because because of our conditioning, it's more likely that we exploit others because these are one of the four defects in the conditioned soul. And it's more likely that we exploit others and we misuse the power. So how do we, work with that? Like if we see somebody is in a higher position than us, and for some reason it is being a bit misused, so how can we, work with that?
But without transcendental knowledge, without the transcendental intelligence coming from Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, then we're forced to act according to our mundane conceptions. So we have to hear regularly. We have to try and we have to remember what we heard, and we have to put into practice what we heard. Then we pray to Krishna that he'll reveal to us what is the actual experience that comes along with the knowledge. Unless we have a change of consciousness, we can't have a change of experience. But unless we have a change of experience, then we won't actually appreciate the change of consciousness. So we have to pray that we get realization, not only theoretical knowledge, but also realization. The realization will only come when we become tolerant of our material conceptions of life and not take them so seriously. as if that's our real interest, is maintaining our material conceptions of life, rather than changing our conception of life and praying to Krishna that he allows us to tolerate even our impulses and our material speculations, tolerate and act according to the desire to act according to what Krishna desires, how he'd like us to act, how Srila Prabhupada would like us to act, how others, how pure devotees would like us to act, how by following the higher devotees and trying to act like them, following their footsteps, how we can become their servant and therefore act in Krishna consciousness to satisfy Krishna. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it does, but I had some also. Anyhow, it's okay. Thank you.
Good. Anything else? Yes. Here's the pod.
Hi, Krishna Gurudev. Today's Guru Purnima, and can you talk a bit about that? Because I don't really I see it come along each year, but I don't have much of an understanding of Guru Purnima.
Guru Purnima, Prabhupada he never emphasized Guru Purnima. So many gurus, Mayavadi gurus, personalist gurus, so many gurus. So the real guru comes in our disciple succession. Those who are giving knowledge of Krishna. So generally, we don't celebrate Guru Purnima. We celebrate, for instance, Prabhupada's appearance day. Or their acharyas and disciple succession. We celebrate those appearance and disappearance days. Anyhow, Guru probably didn't even want us to chant Jai Guru Dev in the Kirtan. It's too impersonal. Otherwise, people have so many gurus. They have as Vaishya Prabhu used to say, he was on book distribution. You go up to someone and say, "Dear sir, you look very spiritual. You must be engaged in something very spiritual." So they said, "Yes, I am very spiritual." "And what do you do?" "I play tennis." "Oh, I knew you were spiritual. You have a tennis guru." Everyone has their guru, whether they know it or not. Everyone's following someone. But we should follow the real gurus, those who are acharyas and those who follow the acharyas in disciple succession. They're the real gurus. Anything else? Okay. Thank you very much. Grandaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai.
Jai.
Bye.
Jai. Oh, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
So much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.